New book, Mustaine by Dave Mustaine. And I read the whole thing last night. I just want to tell you that there are so many drug stories in here and so much alcohol. I woke up with a hangover this morning just by reading the book. Can I just start by reading the title page or the intro page here?
Sure.
If you're looking for bottom, this seems to be about as good a place as any. Although I'd be the first to admit that the bottom has been a moving target in my dark and twisted speed metal version of a Dickensian life. Impoverished, transient childhood? Check. Abusive, alcoholic parent? Check. Mind-fucking religious weirdness, in my case the extremes of the Jehovah's Witnesses and Satanism? Check. Alcoholism, drug addiction, homelessness? Check, check, check. Soul-crushing professional and artistic setbacks? Check. Rehab? Check. 17 times?
That's what they call it. It wasn't really like rehab. You go in there and it was just, their version of rehab. You go in there and you get sobered up and stuff like that, but there was no really giving you the tools that you needed to cope with stuff.
Right. Well, you were saying it's easier to smuggle drugs into a rehab center than it is to smuggle drugs just about anywhere else.
Well, yeah, it's easier to get the drugs smuggled in there than it is to get it from the staff sometimes. Yeah.
And finally, near-death experience. Check that one too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I've always wanted to ask this because drugs seem to be synonymous with all kinds of different music. How is it possible? I mean, you've got a career that's lasted, let's call it 30 years. And how are you able to function at such a high level as a musician, as a performer, if there was everything from pot to crystal meth in the mix?
Well, the crystal meth, let's get that in check first off, because I didn't like that. That was something that some of the people that we knew up in San Francisco did. That was nothing that I liked. So that was part of the story, but the rest of the stuff, when you're doing certain chemicals and stuff like that, there's a point where you need to take the chemical just to be normal, So it wasn't really like, say for example, what I was doing during the day. If you did it and you'd never done it before, I'd probably kill you. Mm-hmm. But because I built up a tolerance to it, it just made me normal.
You talk about that getting well. That's what you guys called it.
Oh, yeah, that's what we called it.
So we alluded to it earlier. You were talking about why rehab didn't work, and you weren't given the tools to make it work. What, having never been, I don't know what this is all about. What does that mean?
Well, usually when you go into a place, it's the medical intent is important. If you're a person who has, if you're using medication from an injury or something, and you need to break the dependency, that's different from somebody who uses medication for emotional pain. And I had not only physical pain growing up, but the emotional pain too. And the reason that I got loaded was about the emotional stuff, and when it's like sobering up a drunken horse thief. As soon as, you get him sober, what do you got? You still have a horse thief, and that's one of the things that I learned a lot on this journey is just that, if you stay focused and you do the right thing and that's the hardest part about this walk is doing the right thing. It was really easy to do the wrong thing, living in excess and all the drugs, all the stuff that goes along with it, but it was that was the easy way. In the long run, it hurt the most because you wake up and you're alone, or you're with somebody and you don't want to be there, and then when you're with somebody, your spirits kind of combine. So it's really a terrible thing to do that to somebody. And like the whole one-night stand concept, it was really prevalent in the beginning of my career in the scene. Everybody did it. Mm-hmm. But, I think part of the consequences of that is you kind of leave a little piece of your soul with everybody you're with, and then you end up with nothing.
It's you mentioned in the book how you would go out on tour, and you'd play to all these people and go to all these parties, and then you'd go off tour and you'd be homeless. You'd have no place to live.
Yeah, that's true. We did talk about it.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about it was that's the reality. Somebody just asked me what my favorite place to visit is now, and I said my house.
Yeah, I bet.
Because you're touring so much that and when you're in a relationship, you really need to take time to nurture that relationship, to put in the time with people, because it's a relationship is a living organism, and you know, if you don't go home enough, or your significant other doesn't spend enough time with you out on the road, you know, doubt starts to seep in, and then temptation starts to come in, and between the two of those things, I mean, even the mightiest of oaks will fall. You know, so I've taken some precautions nowadays to keep myself, you know, strong in my faith, and strong in my family and my relationship with my wife. And
I want to come back to the whole issue of faith a little bit later, because there's a really interesting story there. I think, coming from a Jehovah's Witness background, going so far off the path and then coming back to it. But I want to save that for just a bit. Let's just clear up a couple of things to Metallica. Quit or fired?
I was fired.
You were fired.
Because I punched him.
That was James, right? Yeah. Okay.
But we just made, you know, when we did the Big Four thing, you know, there's no feud. It's you know, I mean, anybody that continues to perpetuate that stuff is just going for, you know, just tabloid sensationalism, and really, I feel that when I see that stuff in print, I feel sorry for the journalists who keep doing that beaten, tired old story, trying to sell press. It's like, man, there's so many great things that are happening with me, with my career. Do you have to go back to that? You know, because I mean, there's nothing there. If someone can't tell now that there's no feud after we played on stage together, I mean, what do I need, a love child to prove it? You know, I mean, come on.
Throughout the book, you make amends with a lot of people, people that you had feuds with, or had feuds with you, that screwed you over, or maybe you screwed them over. But you seem
both ways, yeah.
Yeah, you seem to have sorted out so many of those issues that dogged you for so many years. It's kind of neat to see.
Well, I think that if a guy's man enough to ask to have his heart, you know, to be revealed, you know, what's inside of it, you know, you're going to see some stuff that's, you know, it's not pretty. And the next step is, are you man enough now that you know what it is to do something about it? You know, and for me, the hard part wasn't, you know, knowing that I'd done a bunch of stuff that wasn't right. You know, I grew up without a dad, and you know, I didn't have anybody to really lean on as a father figure, as a husband figure, or as a male role model. So I kind of winged it my whole life, and consequently picked up some pretty wicked survival skills that aren't necessarily, you know, coming from a loving place. It's more like, you know, what would Rambo do?
Right.
You know, and you can't act like that in a relationship with people, whether it's a working relationship, or it's a personal relationship, or a romantic relationship. You know, you have to be different about things. And I was so guarded from the stuff that I grew up with, you know, the religiosity, the being a latchkey kid and all that stuff. It really galvanized me. So it was hard to break that shell.